This video will review the typical bleeding procedures for both flat bar lever and drop bar lever hydraulic TRP and Tektro brakes. For other brands, see our video playlist here. Brake bleeding requires a thorough technical knowledge of the braking system. If in doubt, or if your procedure is not working, contact the brake manufacturer's website for their model-specific information. It is important to always use the appropriate brake fluid for the brake being serviced. Never use a DOT fluid for brakes designed for mineral oil. Conversely, never use a mineral oil in brakes designed for a DOT fluid. Mixing fluids can cause damage to the components and lead to brake failure. Additionally, you should never share bleed kits between DOT fluids and mineral oils. You may also want to anticipate any advertent spills and drips on the floor. Dispose of any fluid in accordance with your local waste disposal authorities. Typical tools and supplies for this procedure include the BKM1 brake bleed kit from Park Tool, appropriate mineral oil for the system, hex wrenches, Park Tool piston press PP 1.2 tire lever or cone wrench, clean rags, isopropyl alcohol, T15 Torx compatible wrench, 6mm box wrench, safety glasses and gloves. The basic concept of bleeding a hydraulic brake system is to remove the old fluid and any air bubbles, replacing it with fresh fluid and eliminating air. Remove the wheel. Rotate the bike so that there is a consistent uphill travel from the caliper to the lever. For rear brakes, the bike may need to be tilted. Lower the stand if necessary. For flat bar brake levers, rotate the lever so the bleed port screw is at the highest point. Remove the pads from the caliper. Reset the pistons back into the caliper body. Install the brake bleed blocks, holding them with the pad retaining screw. There are some designs you may need to get creative with how to hold the bleed blocks in place. When there are dual pistons, use two. Install the syringe holder above the caliper. Inspect the caliper for the bleed port. Take note as to whether it has a Torx compatible tool fitting or a bleed nipple fitting. This will affect your syringe configuration. If your caliper has a bleed nipple, select one hose with fittings at both ends and attach it to the syringe. For the other syringe, select the hose with only one fitting. The other end is open to fit over the bleed nipple. Attach this hose to the second syringe. If the caliper has a Torx-fitted bleed port, select the two hoses with fittings on each end and attach one to each syringe. We will be using the green adapter, part 2625 with an M5 thread, and the black adapter, part 2584-2 with an M6 thread. Attach an adapter to the threaded end of your hoses. That's two adapters for bleed screw and one adapter for bleed nipples. Select the syringe with the green adapter for the caliper and fill 3/4 full with the appropriate mineral brake fluid. Hold syringe upright and pull back to clear the tubing. Now slowly and carefully push the plunger until fluid just comes to the end of the tubing. For bleed nipple models, fill the syringe with one open end. Clear this syringe of any air by pushing the plunger until fluid just comes to the end of the tubing. We will now install the empty plunger at the lever. For drop bar levers, pull the rubber hood from the back to the front until you see the bleed port screw. Remove the screw using a Torx-compatible T15. The rubber hood overlaps the bleed port. Pull it back and out of the way while you install only the black adapter. Now thread the empty syringe into the adapter. For flat bar levers, locate and remove the bleed port screw using a Torx-compatible T15. Install the empty syringe into the lever bleed port. We will now install the full syringe at the caliper. Before removing the caliper bleed port, pull back a little at the lever syringe to create a vacuum. This helps reduce any dripping at the caliper bleed port. For these two models, the caliper bleed port screw is removed using a Torx-compatible T15. Thread the full syringe with adapter onto the caliper bleed port. Attach the syringe to the syringe holder. This model has a bleed nipple. Remove the cover. Install a 6mm box end wrench over the nipple and attach the syringe hose to the nipple. Loosen the bleed nipple at least 1/4 turn. Attach the syringe to the syringe holder. Begin to push fluid from the caliper syringe through the caliper, up the brake line to the lever syringe. As you push at the caliper, also pull a bit at the lever syringe. This helps clear any air in the line as it flows from the caliper through the lever to the empty syringe. Use care not to introduce air at the caliper syringe by depressing it all the way to the plunger. If the fluid looks dirty and contaminated, it should be changed. Remove the syringe, dispose of the old fluid, and refill the syringe 3/4 full with clean fluid. Next, hold the lever syringe upright and push the fluid back down to the caliper. Pull back slightly at the caliper syringe at the same time. If no bubbles appear in the line, push the fluid one last time from the caliper up to the lever syringe. Again, pulling back a bit on the opposite syringe. If bubbles seem to be in the line, give it another cycle of fluid between the two syringes. With no bubbles present, disconnect the syringe from the brake caliper and reinstall the bleed port screw. Tighten to 4 Nm. For bleed nipple models, use the wrench to close and secure the bleed nipple. Remove the hose and remove the syringe and the syringe holder. Disconnect the syringe from the lever and reinstall the bleed port screw. The brake lever screw is a lighter torque, typically less than 1 Nm. Test the system by pulling on the lever with force. It should feel firm. If the lever was rotated, move it back to the original position. Remove blocks from caliper. Clean the caliper and lever using a clean rag and alcohol. Install pads. Install the wheel and pull the lever to move the pads to the rotor. Pull the lever repeatedly to move the pads to the rim. Adjust brake caliper to the rotor as needed. After bleeding, remove hose from syringe and remove adapters from the hose. Let the hoses drain. Make sure any hose clips are open. A little remnant mineral oil in the syringe is not an issue. Otherwise, the syringe can be taken apart to be cleaned at your discretion. Thanks for watching this repair help video from Park Tool. We're constantly adding videos and articles here on YouTube, as well as our website at parktool.com. Please give this video a thumbs up if it helped you out. And of course, subscribe for the latest content from Park Tool.